is going to be the evolve of Morphe Cosmetics. So I thought I would do one of these videos because I've not done one of them in ages, and Morphe as a brand is a brand like I'm kind of interested in that. Any videos and that I will link down below that I used to help me with this video and some of my own videos on certain things I will link down below. Morphe is a popular artist-founded brand founded in 2008 by siblings Chris and Linda Towie. Inspired by makeup artists and influencers, Morphe was known for its high pigmented, affordable makeup and professional brushes. Morphe started out under the name Morphe Brushes and was only selling brushes and was only a brush selling company. That was all they did. They were kind of shady. There was controversy around their brushes, around private labeling their brushes. I think private labeling is useful and it can help smaller brands when they're starting out. Even massive brands do it, which is a little shady. So I don't fault them for this. There is a difference between taking already existing shades and packaging and changing them around, making them more interesting. Whereas Morphe took already cheap palettes and packaging and sold them for a slightly higher price tag, but then didn't really change them. It's one where it was hard to find information, I will say, on whether they use private labeling. Stephanie Cole put out a really detailed video about Morphe and their practices, and any videos I watched I will leave linked down below. From what she found, it was pretty compelling. Morphe was using private labeling till 2016. Now, private labeling and that is common knowledge, but was not common knowledge in 2016. In 2008, when Morphe started, they just bought brushes wholesale from a company called Crown Brushes and then just sold them as Morphe brushes. In the beginning, it was speculated that while Morphe did change the name on the handles of the brushes from Crown to Morphe, they didn't change the number code that was on the brushes. Now, if you have a Morphe brush and it was M39, like it was back in 2008 when it first came out with the brushes, they had C139, the brush code, all started with a C. In the FAQ section, people were asking if their brushes had a code that had a C in them. They had said they were still legitimately Morphe brushes because they started putting M's on all their brushes after they started getting bigger. Morphe confirmed that they were going through a rebrand, that their brushes with a C on them were still legitimate. 2013, Morphe opened their first brick and mortar store. This was pointed out by Stephanie Cole in 2016, and since then in the FAQ question has been deleted off the website. This shows that Morphe wasn't even changing the brush code from the Crown brushes. Other reasons why people think they were private labeled through Crown is because you can find examples of Crown brushes and Morphe brushes looking the exact same. They are identical. They were made from similar materials. They had some collections. They even had some of the same collections. They had a gunmetal collection that had these chrome brush handles. And Crown also had these available for wholesale. Morphe was buying these Crown brushes wholesale, getting the name Morphe screen printed on, and then selling them. Later down the line, when Morphe started making makeup palettes, they do exactly the same thing. Took a pre-existing Crown Brushes palette, switched a few shades, switched around a couple of shades, branded from Crown palette to Morphe palette. I can't exactly say 100% for like legal reasons that Morphe was private labeled by Crown. A channel called Illuminate did a deep dive on Morphe and private labeling. We'll link the video down below. They were reselling their palettes at $2 to $3 more than what Crown brushes were selling their palettes for. You could buy a Crown brush at like $9 or a more well-known brand Morphe for $12. Morphe would sell their products at like trade shows. Like selling at trade shows was a smart thing because their thing was you could get things at an affordable price. They were able to build a strong clientele with like makeup artists being at these trade shows, a makeup artist starting out trying to build a kit. They're building their audience of makeup artists that need to build a kit on an affordable rate. It's hard to tell when Morphe made the switch to just brushes to doing makeup. The 35 palettes, what made Morphe popular, was speculated to be like private labeled. Morphe would take what a palette that Crown had already made and then switching them around and then releasing the same cheap packaging Crown offer to, or an even cheaper packaging. Some of the Crown palettes had mirrors, whereas some of the Morphe palettes did not. In 2014, these palettes became huge. They were unique, being able to get 35 shades for like $21. They were sold as makeup artistry level palettes. These palettes looked to me like so boring, with brown with pops of colour. The 35O, the 35G, so boring. The 35P looks a bit more interesting with the purple. The 35C, which was a more colourful palette. The 35O was the first palette that got a lot of success for Morphe. I don't agree with the way Morphe went about things, but they were smart in terms of their marketing. Marketing their palettes as the 35 blank palette was a genius move. It tells you how many shades you were going to get. You'd know that you were going to get 35 shades. They gave off that vibe of the brand that it was for professional level makeup artists. They probably learned how to like market themselves like that by doing like these trade shows. Seeing how professional grade makeup companies market themselves to like makeup artists. The thing was also the makeup consumer can have like the same products as like makeup artists could, which was like a really unique idea at a low price, made them stand out. Morphe became well known on like social media. They were not the first brand to use like social media, but they were the first to become so successful at using like social media marketing and using influencers. Linda and Chris have admitted that the only way they were able to become so successful was through social media. There was this term, more hashtag Morphe babes. Anybody that worked with them, anybody who was affiliated with them, and all of the influencers that had codes with Morphe were Morphe babes. They would be featured on the website. They were later put up in Morphe stores. Morphe saw the value of like influencer marketing and like the makeup gurus. They had people like Jaclyn Hill, Manny MUA, Laura Lee, all of them at the beginning of the rise of influencers. Marketing, a lot of these influencers still have like strong loyalty with Morphe, which we don't really see with any other brand, more than just like business relationships. 2015 is when they did their first collab, their first influencer collab palette, and it was with Jaclyn Hill. There were loads of reviews on this palette. This was called the Jaclyn Hill Favorites palette. Jaclyn said this was marketed as she picked her most favourite shades. Morphe Shadows put them in a palette. They were pre-made shades she picked. In 2016, they did a collab with Cataline Lights. This was such a sought after palette. Being a hashtag Morphe babe, or a lot of things came along. There was the 10% off code with Morphe. Morphe wasn't the first or last to do like affiliate codes, but they were the most prevalent brand to do affiliate codes and that. 2016, there was these Morphe babes constantly pushing their Morphe code. Every new release, every single Morphe babe would post a video pushing their code to their followers, into talking about it. A lot of affiliate codes now are like very much common knowledge, but it wasn't common knowledge in like 2014. FTC hadn't hammered yet down on social media influencers quite, and YouTube was still kind of new of marketing. A lot of people, including Morphe, were not disclosing or being like very transparent about the term affiliate and actually what it meant. People were aware of using someone's code, but weren't aware if they used someone's code that they would get a commission. I don't think it is a bad thing for influencers to get a commission from a code on a product that they recommend. I have no problem with that. I do think that you need to be honest with your audience that you are making a commission, because it could make you a little bit biased when talking about these products. 2014 to 2016, everyone was pushing Morphe because they were the best products. We didn't know how much money people were making from like Morphe codes at the time. We thought they were talking about it so much because they loved the palettes and they were good palettes. And they loved the brushes. If we knew back then there were some biases because they were making money from these codes, I think people would have been a bit more skeptical of those reviews. Influencers were not being transparent, but Morphe was not encouraging transparency. This was blown up in 2016 by a drama channel named Here for the Tea. Here for the Tea really exposed and blew up this situation. Was one of the first drama channels to break down what an affiliate code, why people were pushing Morphe codes. The palette was priced 20% more than it actually needed to be to make an impressive cost. Their cost margins were about 20% more than they needed to be. That was because if you used an influencer's code, the person would technically be getting 10% off, but the influencer would get a 10% commission from every single sale. Would get 10 commissions from every single sale. Basically, the money you saved went to the influencer. People found out that their favourite influencers were maybe pushing something onto you that maybe wasn't the best quality, just because they knew it would make them a lot of money. A lot of people had done critical reviews that weren't hashtag Morphe babes. They also got a lot of pushback from these Morphe influencers. Also, no matter what product came out, it would be compared to Morphe. An orange toned eyeshadow palette would come out, and that's great, but go check out the 35O. Morphe got a bad reputation as a shilling brand. Nobody trusted the influencers who talked about Morphe. At that point, it was only those who watched YouTube drama channels and went into the YouTube drama scene that knew about it. That was a substantial amount of people, but that's not everyone. Not everyone who uses makeup watches YouTube drama channels, who watches hashtag Morphe Babes. The YouTube beauty community only makes up a small percentage of the world's beauty community. Morphe was still doing fine with those people. If you watched anyone who had a Morphe code casually, you had like no idea about the drama that was going on with the Morphe codes. People with Morphe codes were still pushing these products. People still believed them. A lot of brands can move past this because the YouTube beauty doesn't make up the whole consumerage. 2017 also started to change Morphe. Even though Morphe, they weren't private labeled as such anymore, they still kept the plastic black packaging with the basic logo on the front. Their price point was still the same. A lot of palettes were very similar. 2017 did start to change a little bit. They had the 25B palette, still a neutral palette. 3 palettes were really raved about from... The palette was really raved about, different from the normal Morphe palettes. They had a clear cover. They were $25, different packaging. Morphe was trying to change things up. 2017, the formula was more consistent in 2017, from their mattes to their shimmers. 2017, Morphe launched the OG Jaclyn Hill palette. This made this brand so successful. This took Morphe to another level. 2017, Morphe started being sold at Ulta. That move was only the success of their standard palettes in 2016. This wasn't only just the success of their standard palettes in 2016, but this palette that then going into Ulta happened very shortly before this palette launched. Part of this plan, this was how close the timing of the two things were. The Jaclyn Hill palette probably had a lot to do with Morphe making its way into Ulta. This Jaclyn Hill palette was huge, so many reviews. Crumb Brushes does have a palette that looks similar to the Jaclyn Hill palette that's called the OMG palette. Jaclyn claims this palette came out after her palette. It was made like a dupe palette to her. There isn't a way to tell which palette came first. There was a ton of similar, smaller, private labeled brands trying to dupe the Jaclyn palette because it was insanely popular. There have been scandals in recent years with the Jaclyn Hill palette. YouTuber Jen Luvs Reviews, Jen Luvs Now, kind of exposed the situation when she discovers the formula of the Jaclyn Hill palette has changed. You might not think this is a big deal, brands reformulate, because the Jaclyn Hill palette inherently was marketed as a vegan palette, because the products that were listed on the palette and the ingredients, knowing it was vegan, helps people who might have allergies not buy a palette with ingredients like carmine. A lot of people are allergic to that. If they hear it's vegan, they assume carmine, it's not that product that's in it, and it's okay to buy because it's vegan. Morphe decided to change the palette to include that ingredient. That is unethical and dangerous, because people can think there isn't an ingredient in there that actually is in there. And there are people who think this product is vegan when it's not vegan. A lot of people pride themselves on shopping ethically in that way. A lot of people are passionate that animal products should not be used in makeup. to change the palette without making it abundantly clear to consumers that the palette is no longer vegan, and to change that behind the scenes is kind of shady that Jacqueline claims she has like no idea that the formula changed is unethical. This is evidence. It's kind of like morphe in its shady business practice. Wasn't until like Jen Luvs' video got lots of reviews that the brand made a statement that the product was no longer vegan. At that point, it was unclear when the product had actually changed. People had no idea whether they bought the palette that was vegan or not. That was kind of bad, like messing with people's morals and like putting people that had allergic reactions in danger. Like, that is the worst. In 2017, Morphe also launched their 35A palette. The colour story was interesting, not just neutral browns. This got rave reviews and it gave Morphe back credibility with the YouTube beauty community. Morphe in 2017 started carrying other brands like Jeffree Star Cosmetics, Iconic London, P. Louise. They started selling like other influencers, smaller brands, as well as their own brand. 2018, Morphe opened more brick and mortar stores, and that started to explode across America, other countries. Morphe stores were the only place that you could physically buy Jeffree Star Cosmetics products. People started giving them really good reviews again because their quality of their products is like much better. 2018, this is something I've mentioned in my Evolve of Jaclyn Hill video, which I will also link down below. 2018, the Jaclyn Hill Vault collection came along. I have spoken about the Jaclyn Hill Vault in my Evolve of Jaclyn. We'll link it down below. Morphe decided to do another collab with Jaclyn Hill, the Vault collection, made up of colours that they felt were missing from the original Jaclyn Hill palette. They set up this launch and sent PR to all of their influencers. Influencers got the PR, the reviews were coming in, and they were like really, really bad. People were hating the palette, saying there was really poor quality. Jaclyn Hill and Morphe made the collective decision not to launch the palettes. At the time they were supposed to, because there were inconsistency issues across the board with the palettes. They decided to hold off on the launch, fix the palette, and then relaunch. 6 weeks after making that announcement, they announced they were ready to launch. So the drama around this. A lot of people in the makeup industry were like, there is now no way that they could have made that many palettes and fixed everything. And like everything was right in 6 weeks. The process takes a long time if you start from scratch to make everything. There again, there's no way they could have done that and made it ready to sell in 6 weeks. Once these palettes came out, they were still getting horrible reviews. They were having similar problems. There was a lot of batch code issues. A lot of palettes had a batch code of V2 and a lot of them didn't. A lot of people felt like they were selling some of the OG palettes and selling some of the new palettes. And that was just mixing all of them together and hoping for the best. There have been a lot of conflicting stories as to what happened with these old palettes. At first, it was they were quarantined and studied and never sold or touched, but it was also said they reused the packaging for like some of them, and they pulled out the bad shades and put in the new ones. 2018, when this happened, Morphe had been rebuilding their reputation. This kind of tore back down their reputation. They'd been building back up because there was so much drama surrounding them. That was again only if you were into the YouTube drama community, which by 2018 it was much bigger than it had been in 2016. Still only a proportion of the beauty community around the world. It again showed Morphe's lack of transparency. Later on in 2018, the James Charles palette launched, which kind of saved their reputation. The James Charles palette was incredibly successful. This palette sold out in under 10 minutes, within 5 to 6 minutes in the UK and Europe during its November launch. It sold out within minutes across various locations. It was being remade, people were selling it for so much money. People were selling fakes of this palette. The James Charles palette was one of the biggest palettes Morphe's ever done. The palette got pretty good reviews across the board. There was a disaster with the Vault collection, and then this massive success with James Charles' palette. The brand again gained a bit more credibility after the launch of the James Charles palette. It was confusing whether the James Charles palette is vegan or not. There was a lot of research done by people inherently. The palette claimed to be vegan by Morphe and also by the ingredients list, but later it found out that they hid the ingredient carmine into the formula without letting people know, which that is so shady. Like, not letting people know. They put it under a name which is not normally found under. You would find the fact that it's in there, but it's not commonly known name that it's in there. They were saying it was vegan and trying to claim it's vegan once you're able to put in all the actual ingredients. It was found not to be a vegan palette. This brings up the issue with Morphe's cruelty-free status. Brands, it's easy for them to lie about their cruelty-free status. There is no way of fact-checking if a brand is actually cruelty-free and can be misleading. The YouTube Illuminate went into depth in her video, basically discovering the Morphe might be cruelty-free. They do send their products to mainland China to be sold, which would apply they're not cruelty-free. Morphe doesn't really give straight answers if they test on animals or not, which would think they would be transparent about, but they're not. They do bend it. I think they are aware of what comes with not being cruelty-free or vegan as a brand. So they try to fit it into that, even if they're not cruelty-free or vegan. 2018 Morphe store openings where influencers would do like meet and greets. They started flying their most prominent Morphe babes like James Charles, Jeffree Star, Jaclyn Hill. They started flying them across the country to different Morphe store locations to be at their store openers. You'd see influencers cutting the ribbons and so many people crowding in the malls to meet their favourite influencers. It brought tens of thousands of people to Morphe stores and made people even more aware of the brand. Morphe opened a store in the UK. They had James Charles there. They actually shut down a certain part of London because it was so crowded, because there was so many people. That put Morphe in the main headlines. Morphe really utilised the hype around influencers. Morphe's influencer to marketing was impressive. 2019, Morphe launched a base collection. They launched foundations, concealers, powders, and maybe a primer. The cruelty-free and vegan thing, they know it will make them seem good. Morphe put out 60 shades of foundation. Even though it was 60 shades, the shade range was not inclusive, which shows you don't need 60 shades if it's a good spectrum of shades. It showed the performativeness of what Morphe was trying to do, be inclusive without actually being inclusive. People thought, are you kidding? 60 shades of a formula, still not a shade for everyone. The formula of the foundation concealer was heavily criticised. Even Morphe babes couldn't really push the formula. It was one of Morphe's worst launches to date. No one really liked the foundation concealer. 2019, Morphe collabed with everyone, putting out loads of collabs with everyone and tons of releases. They did a Jeffree Star collection. They had one with Manny MUA in 2019. By this point, people had low expectations for Morphe. 2019, Morphe was heavily featured in Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star's documentary, the Beauty Community documentary. It showed them they were going to the Morphe store openings multiple times, showed them on the phone with Morphe, talked about Morphe a lot. Morphe probably, at the time, got a lot of sales from that. In 2020, when Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star's careers imploded after a series of long, drawn-out events, Morphe was heavily associated with Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star. This really hit the brand. They had to backtrack pretty heavily. 2020, they made the decision to stop selling Jeffree Star cosmetics. It was not going to be a big hit for Jeffree Star cosmetics, but it was going to be a big hit for Morphe. A lot of people went in their brick and mortar stores because they could buy Jeffree Star cosmetics in person and they could go in and see the products. Late 2019, they also did another collab with James Charles, which was the James Charles mini palette. Morphe did in 2019 got a new investor, General Atlantic. Their plan was to invest a ton of money in them and make the brand better. They also wanted to expand their portfolio of a new generation beauty brands. Morphe makes the identity of influencers a part of their own brand. Morphe in 2020 launched the Morphe 2 line. Morphe moved into the lighter style cream blushes, lighter coverage foundations, less pigmented lip glosses. They used Charli and Dixie D'Amelio, who were like the queens of TikTok. They used them to market these products. They didn't make it clear that Charli and D'Amelio weren't actually the collaborators. They made it seem like it was Charli and Dixie's makeup line, when Charli and Dixie were just the models for the campaign. Morphe's use of TikTok shows that they were very good at understanding influencer marketing, what was kind of new and popping at the time. They are still seeing the value of YouTube beauty gurus, but to attract a younger audience, they needed to move to where there was a much younger audience, where there are a lot of kid influencers, teen influencers. 2020, Morphe also had their first Coca-Cola collab. They also did collabs this year with Madison Beer, Maddie Ziegler, Nikita Dragon. Morphe in 2021 launched the Soul Matte lipstick, the Soul Matte lip liner. Morphe also released their second Coca-Cola collab, and a Morphe 2 X Maddie Ziegler, a new collection from their partnership with Maddie Ziegler. In 2022, Morphe had the Make Your Own Blush collection. This collection featured blush balm, a cream formula with a murmur and murmur, and they had the Chroma Plus collection, a range of a 6-pan and a 12-pan eyeshadow palette designed for high pigmentation and long-lasting wear. Morphe had their continuous setting spray in 2022. Morphe also had their Vegan Pro Series brush set, a set of 20 new synthetic cruelty-free with FSC certified wooden handles. 2023 is when former brand, the parent company to Morphe, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Morphe also closed all of their stores as well. I've got videos I will link down below. Jen Luvs has done videos on this, so I will link all of those videos down below. 2023 was the year that Morphe started shifting away from influencer collabs to produce launches. Morphe in the summer of 2023 did have a collab with Meredith Duxbury, which launched on July 31st, 2023. This collaboration featured a 35-pan artistry palette with brights and neutrals, multi-effect palette, blush and highlighter, a lip liner and a gloss duo, a brow sculpt in wax. Morphe had their Light Foam Extended Hydrating Foundation, a lightweight medium coverage foundation with a natural dewy finish formulated with Hydro Relief Complex. Morphe had their Soulmate Velvet Lip Mousse, a range of matte lipsticks described as light, airy, and highly pigmented. Launched in 2023. Morphe had their Cloud Light Soft Glow Veil, a pressed powder with light reflecting technology. Squalane and hyaluronic acid for a soft, radiant finish. Morphe also had their Lip Filter Hydro Plump Soft Matte Lipstick. Hydrating soft matte lipstick containing plumping peptides, jojoba seed oil, and mango butter. So this was the point where Morphe was really starting to do like launches and that. Morphe had the continuous prep, set, and mist. Hydrating and long-lasting formula designed for prep and post makeup application. Moving into 2024, Morphe had the Soulmate Gel Lip Liner, a cream gel-based lip pencil designed to contour and define lips with a nourishing oil blend. Morphe also had their signature lip pencil, which was a highly pigmented, creamy matte lip pencil available in various shades for shaping and lining. So Morphe from 2024 to 2025 focused on like higher pigment, user-friendly and versatile formulas featuring a mix of like new palettes, lip products and essential tools. Morphe have their Cheek Frill Multi-Finish Face Trio. Morphe have their Wake Up Artist Undercover Eye Corrector. A lightweight serum-infused concealer that brightens, corrects and smooths the appearance of under eyes with a natural radiant finish for comfortable all-day wear. Morphe also have their Bake Set Translucent Powder. Sets makeup for up to 16 hours and wear and minimise shine for up to 24 hours with the Morphe Bake Set Powder. Hue Perforotic Rush 3-in-1 Silk Blush. Morphe have their Hot Drops. Morphe have their Hot Sun Drops. Morphe in 2025, I'd definitely say like everyone's back to like raving about this brand. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and I will see you in another video. Bye.